The Maritime Union, or a Confederation of Atlantic Canada. This is the conference room in the PEI legislature where they have a reenactment of the Charlottetown Conference every summer. The Charlottetown Conference of 1864 was originally conceived as a way for Britain to reduce its spending on British North American colonies. This idea was put forward by Lieutenant Governor of New Brunswick, Arthur Gordon, who saw as a means to better administer the colonies of the Atlantic coast. An invitation came to the Charlottetown Conference was given to the government of Newfoundland, but the reply came back that there were two reasons why Newfoundland would not send out delegates. Firstly, they thought they were just too far away for them to do any good to the Maritimes or Canada, and vice versa. Secondly, that there was simply not enough time to put together a delegation to send. There was also probably yet another reason why Newfoundland didn't send delegates to the Charlottetown Conference. Although they did have a responsible government that was established in 1855, at that time they were a dominion, not a colony. As such, they had a great deal more independence. The Nova Scotia delegates, led by Dr. Charles Tupper, the Premier of Nova Scotia at the time, were the very first to arrive in Charlottetown. In fact, they even managed to get to Charlottetown ahead of some of the Prince Edward Island delegates. The Nova Scotia delegation consisted of Tupper, Robert B. Dickey, Dr. Adams George Archibald, William Alexander Henry, and Jonathan Macaulay. They are listed in Appendix C for future reference, which I will read at some point. The delegation from Prince Edward Island, Appendix F, was led by William Henry Pope and consisted of George Coles, Colonel John Hamilton Gray, Andrew Archibald MacDonald, and Edward Palmer. William Henry Pope was a very enthusiastic supporter of the idea of political unions between the maritime provinces, but he also wanted more power for Prince Edward Island in this new maritime union. Yet Prince Edward Island is the smallest of all the maritime provinces, so what William Henry Pope was thinking didn't really make much sense to any of the other delegates. As a result, Prince Edward Island did not join Confederation until Pope was defeated in an election in 1873, leaving Prince Edward Island no choice but to join Confederation. The next group of delegates to arrive from outside the Prince Edward Island were a delegation from the province of New Brunswick. They were led by Appendix E. They were led by Sir Samuel Tilley, who wasn't the New Brunswick Premier. The New Brunswick delegation was led by Tilley, Fisher, Charles Fisher, Edward Chandler, John Hamilton Gray, and John Mercer Johnston and William Steeves. The man who would be part of the New Brunswick delegation and should have been in charge of it was the Premier of the day, Charles Fisher. Yet to this day, no one really knows why, as the Premier of New Brunswick, Fisher was not in charge of the delegation. There are three reasons. One, Fisher was ill at the Charlottetown Conference, so if he needed to, he could return home to New Brunswick, and he could leave Tilley in charge, who, as a former Premier of New Brunswick, was of capable pair of hands. The second hypothesis is that Tilley was in charge of the delegation from New Brunswick, but because he could unite the often disunited people of New Brunswick. The third hypothesis was that if Sir Samuel Tilley was in charge, it would mean the city of St. John was for a political union of the maritime provinces. The city of St. John would carry great weight when it came to selling the idea of the maritime union to the people of New Brunswick, as at that time, if St. John did not support something that was good for New Brunswick, then it was bound to succeed because the city was the wealthiest city in all of Atlantic Canada. In fact, the city of St. John wasn't in agreement with something in New Brunswick, then whatever it was in the province that would need to get done would never have gotten done. St. John needed to be committed, and as it was the wealthiest and sixth largest port city in the world at the time, so maybe that is why Sir Samuel Tilley wasn't in charge of the New Brunswick delegation at the Charlottetown Conference. In the end, many people who studied the Charlottetown Conference and Confederation generally subscribe to the second or third hypothesis, as the first one seems very unlikely because Mitchell did not travel far or at all when ill. So the notion of Charles Fisher being ill is most likely and entirely made up by the people who said he was a hypochondriac or an invalid. The idea of having one maritime province has come up time and again throughout the history of Canada, mostly because of the maritime provinces being far better off as one big province. Although the practice practical means of getting there is much more difficult than it sounds. Even though we've all talked about it, there seems to be a movement on the issue since the 1980s and 1990s. But even then, the only reason why the Union of the Maritime Provinces, or for that matter, the Union of all of Atlantic Canada, was even considered was because the province of Quebec was raising issues with the issue of secession again from Canada in order to become its own independent country. Although the 1999 referendum on independence in Quebec produced an extremely small percentage of 50.51% that did not favor secession, and this killed the independence movement in Quebec. As a result, there has been no need for political union of the Maritime Provinces, yet the idea that the province of Newfoundland would join a political union of the Maritime Provinces is extremely hypothetical to say the least. The sort of confederation is a little adapted, has sometimes been referred to as a bad thing for all of Atlantic Canada. This is because of the fact that being the smallest part of Canada geographically, and despite having some constitutional advantages in the British North America Act of 1867, they are still at a disadvantage because of a small size and a lot of other factors as well.